Now I'm starting to think I should run my microphone. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with a type of a writing vlog. I'm in my favorite coffee shop, All About Cha, and today we're going to go over interrogating, or should I say, interviewing your characters. I feel like this technique really helped me out, and it's a very kind of beginner tactic to use, but when you actually apply it and put work into it, it actually works out very well. I did this with a couple characters so far, and there are a list all online to kind of help you out with that, but the one I got here was from my friend Shayla, and I'll probably throw up a link somewhere if she'll, give me the page for it. Now, originally, this started off as interviewer or antagonist, but it's my personal belief that a protagonist and an antagonist, they're two sides of the same coin, if you will. So naturally, a lot of the same questions you'd ask your antagonist, you can ask your protagonist or your characters if you want to give them more depth. So we're going to go ahead and just start on that. I'm just going to open my document here and get it going. Of course, I got my green tea Fredo here. It's my favorite drink so far, and I'm having the passion size. But enough of that, let's go ahead and get to work here and open this up. Now, the scene that I'm writing here, if it'll open up, is pretty much is going to be an emotional argument between Joseph and Benjamin. So what this means is I have to know Benjamin a lot better. Now, could I have done this in the beginning of the book before I got this far? Sure, it would have been the best idea. But it's not a bad idea to just go ahead and get it going right now. Here's the official list. About 17 questions. There are some websites that have 25, 35, even 50 questions if you really want to get in depth. But I really like this one in particular because it doesn't talk about their appearance, which you will see a lot of those lists do. They'll talk about what their hair color is, just kind of what their interests are. Well, not interests, what the hair color is, how tall are they. I want to make sure I focus. How tall are they and whatnot. I like this one because it really probes into what they're thinking, how they tick, how they operate, their modus operandi, if you will. So we'll go ahead and get started on that. Okay, a bit of an update on the questions that I'm asking. I have the first three answered, and I'm kind of stuck, which is good because it forces me to think. So the first question, how old is he and how old is he mentally? And I did it in a way where any of the answers in quotations are kind of like the author notes, kind of like my interpretation. I try to answer it in first person as much as I can. So wrong one. Physically in my mid-20s, mentally much older. I put an exclamation mark because that's how sure he feels about, his mental age. I wrote here, his reactions are suitable to his age as an adult in their mid-20s would want to solidify their purpose in life. I would know this because I am a guy in my mid-20s, or a little past that. I'm approaching late 20s. But I certainly related to that in which, past the age of 25, you kind of know yourself a lot better and you want to solidify your place in the world. And that's kind of how I'm approaching Ben as a character. The second question was, what was it? Did he have a happy childhood? Why or why not? I went ahead and kind of started off with my author notes. Yes, he had multiple siblings and rough house in the higher realm. It was loud and chaotic. There were always pushes of power with my older siblings. Now that doesn't say a lot right away, but I leave that up to interpretation, as in, yeah, he had a pretty good childhood. Where he's from, it's not necessarily a dystopia. And because he had a lot of siblings, he was able to, really expand out. But of course, there could be kind of an underlying theme of him fighting for his individuality, if you will. So he's already kind of caught up in the culture of trying to be duty-bound, if you will. So the third question was, past or present relationships, how did they affect him? I kind of wrote here the relationship with his brother, which is current right now. Most people try to go with the past on this question. I decided to go with the present. When Argon got promoted, it motivated me to work even harder. He always told me that I had potential. I wanted to reach his level. So now I'm getting a clearer understanding of what kind of character he is. He is very duty-bound, but He kind of has his own perceived ideas of both doing good and reaching his potential. So that's going to affect the argument in that way whenever he gets into an argument with Joseph regarding the ways of how he's leading the group, if you will. The fourth question is, what does he care about? And I think by explaining it all just now, I kind of have a better idea of what he actually cares about. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here and just work that out. Okay, so the question number 7, that one's going to be a fun one whenever I get there. But with number four was, what does he care about? I put my author's note, doing right by his culture and customs. His response, I care about accomplishing my goals and overcoming my challenges. I'm none too fond of the distractions where we've been experiencing. So we kind of get an understanding that he's not too big of kind of the kind of distractions, like I said. And he wants to, do right by the culture he grew up in. Not too complicated. Number 5, what is he obsessed about? And now here's where we start to get the conflicting story here. I put, he's obsessed with advancing and obtaining his living weapon. Now, in his culture, whenever you do something of note, something notable, you are recognized by your culture and you are given a living weapon. So he's very obsessed with this idea that he's good enough for it. And he responds, like I said, accomplishing my goals and overcoming challenges. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Now this line right here, if a good guy says this, get ready for a lot of conflict there. If a bad guy says it, you kind of expect it, but a good guy, this is where things get a little complicated. With number 6, biggest fear. His answer is very simple, nothing! Exclamation point to kind of emphasize that this is what he means. I put, not adding up in the eyes of those he admires, like his brother and his father, and failure. He's not very good with dealing with failure. So these last few defeats kind of push him to this point where he confronts Joseph about his leadership. This is why they're going to have the argument. He's pushed to this because now whatever he's afraid of is coming closer to fruition. Number 7, what is the best thing that ever happened to him and the worst? Now this one I'm going to have a little trouble with because this one requires a bit more creativity. It's not so much understanding your character, it's making up kind of a backstory in order to correlate with that character. So I'm going to go ahead and break from here and come up with a bit of backstory for one of the main characters. Alright. Okay, so I went ahead and bumped up by 4 questions here. I went to number 7, which is, what is the best thing that has ever happened to him and the worst? So with number 7, I put the author's note, very narrow-minded initially, maybe expand on this in another story, exemplified by his answer, what he's going to say. It was getting my brother's permission to have the key. It was a confirmation that I was ready to be tested, a chance to prove my worth. As far as the worst has to be something that wavers him. The fight with Ra, and even the fight with Anubis. It hasn't happened, nor will it. So this contradiction right here, just kind of says something about his character for sure. And I did kind of cheat and use the events of what happened in the story so far. I didn't really get too deep into it, but just kind of fleshing him out as a character. So with number 8, I put most embarrassing thing that ever happened to him. Here, I went ahead and spoke again. His defeat at the hands of those earlier foes. They were proofs, and I put next quotations that he wasn't ready. In my personal opinion, you're never defined by your defeats. You are defined your actions after the defeat. And that's just my personal opinion. But in his mind, he put that there. He put the proofs there. And And his answer was, it may happen to mortals like the mechanic, but I'm not typically acting in a way that would bring me shame. Now this kind of exemplifies kind of his feelings towards the mechanic and kind of his more amoral, or rather looseness with morals, and how he's not necessarily feeling that. But of course this is just a kind of conflict for another time. With number 9, I went with biggest secret. And this one was a lot longer Then his actual answer. It is secretly terrified that he doesn't measure up. I'm an open book, so a lot of denial there, a lot of not recognizing his own flaws. Um, and then with number 10, what is the one word what you would use to define him? He says dedicated, and I put to a fault. So this is becoming a really fun exercise. It's helped me understand Benjamin a lot better. The next few questions I'm going to try to get there, and I'll definitely try to use or write some stuff that isn't pertaining to the story itself, something outside that happened in his life. So we're going to go ahead and try that for the next few questions. Okay, so I went ahead and advanced a little bit more with number 11. The question on that one is, his house containing everything he owns catches fire. After saving loved one, pets, he has time to pretty much save one thing, one item. What would it be and why? Well, this one, he responded, an old picture of myself and my squad captain. He was a good man who paid the ultimate price in the line of duty. And I put an extra note here to kind of make it even more special. He's immortal, even. That's the dedication that Ben truly respects. Like, he was because in the beginning of the story, we see that Ben is working as a police officer. Nobody knows that he's a demigod, but he does it because, he has a sense of justice, a sense of right and wrong. But meeting the squad captain, he was an older gentleman who was immortal, who was human, and he dedicated himself even to the point of dying, for his belief in justice. So he truly respects that. So that's probably the one possession he would go in and try to retrieve from the fire. So number 12. Would he like to be famous? In what way? So of course he gave the humble answer of no, not at all. And the longer answer from the author's note, he's too prideful to admit that he'd like to be remembered as a great hero in the higher realm. It's why he wants to take on the cloud in the first place. It's why he even decides to obtain the key from his brother. He wants to earn that fame. But of course he's trying to give off a sense of humility, so he says he doesn't. So number 13, that question is, what is his most treasured memory? And he says, when I was a young child, I had fallen off a tall tree. I did my best to keep my composure, but my mother cared for me, and I remember feeling a deep peace. Now, this kind of gives off a few hints to what the culture in the higher realm was like, because a lot of it is kind of inspired from Egyptology and a little bit of Norse mythology, the higher realm, and so naturally there's a big push for very macho, very tough guy personas, and the fact that he was able to be vulnerable here as a child, he likes to link in it as a deep peace, but I think it's more of he was able to feel free and express openly. And I think that's what we all need as people in general. Just to have moments in our lives where we're able to feel free and just express ourselves openly. And in his culture, it's very much, you have to be the toughest person in the room and whatnot. So it's interesting that he went with this memory right here. Number 14, what is his idea of perfect happiness? I put a life of adventure and enemies to conquer. His response, a life of peace. Because that sounds way more heroic than the truth here. He always wants to challenge himself and better himself. Of course, we have that deep need of wanting to express ourselves and feel free, but above that is the want. And what we want is whatever makes us feel validated. For him, it's success in the battlefield. So that's why I went with this here. So we're going to period there. Next three, they're going to be a little bit more difficult. It requires me to be a bit more creative. But yeah, I'm going to cut here and come right back. Okay, so we're down to the final three questions, and this is when I had to think about some more. Despite the answers being pretty short, I think there's more implications between the lines in the answers. So with 15 is, what trait does he most deplore in himself? And I put, he says, I don't mess with doubts or insecurities. It's his impatience. He wishes he had better control, as it results in many defeats. But the anticipation kills him every time, and that's kind of in a combat situation when patience is key. He can't stand that. He wishes he was a bit more patient, though he'll never admit it. And I think that's kind of the dynamic with Benjamin, is that he's one of those people who will put up a strong front and will not likely deal with kind of his own insecurities and whatnot. As as tradition for demigods in a lot of mythology. You look at Thor, you look at any, Greek type of hero, they never sit down and kind of examine their own flaws. They decide to move on. And that's kind of how I wanted to write him, as kind of as a mythological figure in a literal sense. What it would be like if he existed in our world. He wouldn't confront his own demons like that, just like those classical heroes. In a way, it's kind of fun making that more complex than how it was originally presented. Then we have number 16. What does he consider his greatest achievement? Now this one right here, I put my impending victory, and that's his answer. Though he has tiny achievements for being exceptional, he is an exceptional being. He is a demigod, so naturally accomplishments, though tiny, they do come to him. But he mainly focuses on the future. So destroying the cloud is extremely important to him, because he believes that it'll be his greatest achievement because it'll prove that he's worthy to advance within his own culture. So now we're moving on to the final question. What was... Oh, this is more of an antagonist question, but it works for protagonists as well. What was this trigger that led him down a bad path? I might have to come back to this one, but because I misread it. But he answers, I am resolute. And I put possibly failure in this endeavor. It's a loaded line because he's gambling a lot on the success of this next task. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to this question and look at the context of the question. And kind of instead of a bad path, I'm going to just change it to good path. What drives him? What motivates him? So I'll be right back with that. I went ahead and changed the context to down a good path instead. His answer to that is seeing my brother do good for others. In truth, seeing his brother receive accolades. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that Ben is a bad person. He's genuinely a good person, and he does care about people. It's just that he feels pressure from his own culture and society to be the best demigod he can be. So this is going to come into conflict with Joseph whenever they argue in this next chapter I'm actually going to write right now. So that was a little bit of pretty much your interviewing your character and ensuring that they're a bit more deep, and this really helped out a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and get back to it. Alright everybody, thank you for joining me. Check you later.